Okay, hello everyone. Okay, so the next program is an ingredient adjuster program. I hope you're all doing well, by the way. Alright, the next program is an ingredient adjuster program, and I'll just read the question. A cookie recipe calls for the following ingredients. So these are the ingredients for the cookie recipe. And the recipe produces 48 cookies with these amounts of the ingredients. Write a program that asks the user how many cookies he or she wants to make, and then displays the number of cups of each ingredient needed for the specified number of cookies. So basically, for 48 cookies, you need these ingredients. So if the user enters, for example, 23 cookies, how many ingredients or how many cups of each of these ingredients are going to be needed? The program should calculate and figure out that. So this is also a ratio and proportion problem. And like some of the previous programs that's similar to ratio and proportion, or that involve ratio and proportion, I've used comments to explain some of the math going on behind it. And I know some of you may already know this, but I like to do this just to explain to everyone, so everyone can have an idea, just for people who don't understand it to get it and understand it well. Okay, so it's a ratio and proportion problem, and I'll explain that way. All right, so if 48 cookies is equal to, and I'll do this for first 1.5 cups of sugar. So if 48 cookies is equal to 1.5 cups of sugar, then if the user enters, let's say 23 cookies, how many cups of sugar are we going to get out of it? Okay, so this is how ratio and proportion works. If 48 cookies is going to give us 1.5 cups of sugar, then 23 cookies is obviously going to give us less cups of sugar. And the way ratio and proportion works is this: if 23 cookies is going to give us less cups of sugar, then more divides. What I mean by more divides is the bigger number of these two, in this case 48, divides. And what I mean by divides is the bigger number, 48, goes under 23, and then you end up multiplying by 1.5. So if this was 6, if 48 cookies is equal to 1.5 cups of sugar, then 6 cookies is going to be equal to less cups of sugar. And if less, more divides. The bigger number of these two, 48, divides. And what I mean by 48 divides is 48 goes under 6, and then you end up multiplying by 1.5. If this was 78, if 48 gives us 1.5 cups of sugar, then 78 cookies is going to give us more cups of sugar. And if more, less divides. So the way ratio proportion works is this: if more, less divides. If less, more divides. So if 48 gives us 1.5, 78 is going to give us more cups of sugar. And if more, less divides. The lesser number of these two, in this case 48, divides. And what I mean by 48 divides is 48 goes under 78, and you end up multiplying by 1.5. All of them 1.5. I hope that's clear. All right, so it's the same thing for butter and flour. That's how we're going to calculate how many cups of those ingredients are going to be needed for whatever the user enters. So I'll just copy that and I'll repeat it. It's the same thing, but I want to explain it further. All right, so 48 cookies. If 48 cookies is equivalent to 1 cup of butter, then let's say if the user enters 56 cookies, is equivalent to how many cups of butter? So if 48 cookies is equivalent to 1 cup of butter, then 56 cookies is going to give, even though we don't know, we know that because 56 is bigger than 48, so it's going to give us more, because 48 gives us 1, 56 is going to give us more. And if more, less divides. The lesser number of these two, in this case 48, divides. And what I mean by 48 divides is 48 goes under 56, and you end up multiplying everything by 1. If this was a lesser number, like a less number, if 48 cookies is equal to 1 cup of butter, 77 cookies is going to give us less cups of butter. Even though we don't know, it's going to give us less because, you know, if 48 is a bigger number, 48 gives us 1, then 7 is going to give us less. So if 48 gives us 1 and 7 is going to give us less. If 7 is going to give us less, then more divides. The bigger number of these two divides. And what I mean by divides is 48 goes under 7 and you end up multiplying by 1. So ratio and proportion. If less, more divides. If more, less divides. If this was, say, 87, if 48 cookies is equivalent to 1 cup of butter, then 87 cookies is going to be more, even though we don't know. It's going to be more because 87 is bigger than this. 48 gives us 1, 87 is going to give us more. And if more, ratio and proportion, if more, less divides. The lesser number of these two divides. And what that means is 48 goes under 87 times 1. And it's the same thing for this too, for cups of flour too. So if 48 cookies is equivalent to 2.75 cups of flour, then say 1 cookie, I'll just make it 2 cookies, is going to give us less, because if 48 gives us 2.75, 2 cookies is going to be equivalent to less cups of cups of flour. And if two cookies is going to give us less cups of flour, then more divides. The bigger number of these two divides. And that means that, or what I mean by that is, 48 is the one that's going to go under 2, and then you end up multiplying by 2.75. If this was 78 or 79, if 48 cookies is equivalent to 2.75 cups of flour, then 79 cookies is going to give us more. And if more, less divides. The lesser number of these two divides. And what I mean by divides is, less divides is, what I mean by less divides is 48 cookies, the 48 is going to go under 79, and you end up multiplying all of it by 2.75. So I'm sorry if I spent too much time on this, but I want it to be clear. But one more thing. Notice that at any time we are always dividing by 48 and multiplying by whatever number is here. So for this one, for example, 78 cookies is going to give us more. And if more, less divides. And it's going to be 78 divided by 48 times 1.5. If this was, let's say, 8, if 48 cookies is equivalent to 1.5, 8 is going to give us less. And if less, more divides. So at any time, we are always dividing by 48 and multiplying by 1.5. For this one also, if 48 gives us 1, 87 is going to give us more. And if more, less divides. 5 cookies is going to give us less. And if less, more divides. So at any time, we are always dividing by 48 and multiplying by the number on the right. In this case, 1. Same with this one too. If 48 is equivalent to 2.75, 79 is going to give us more. And if more, less divides. If 48 gives us 2.75, 6 cookies is going to give us less. If less, more divides. So at any time, for all of the cases, we are always dividing by 48 and multiplying by 2.75. So again, I'm sorry if I spent too much time explaining this, but I feel that it's helpful if you have an understanding of it, before going into the program. So that's how we're going to calculate the expected, or how many ingredients we're going to need for whatever the user enters. That's how we're going to get these are the formulas basically we're going to need to get how many ingredients we're going to need for whatever the user enters. And so I'll go ahead and I'll create the class. We now write the program. So public class ingredient adjuster, and now create the main method. Okay, so as always, we will declare some variables. Okay, so I would like to store these values in variables, these values, 1.5, 1, and 2.75. Those are going to be the cups of, for example, 1.5 is going to be the cups of sugar per 48 cookies. Because for every 48 cookies, you need 1.5 cups of sugar. This is going to be the cup per 48 cookies, cups per 48 cookies, 1 cup per 48 cookies. And this is going to be cups of flour per 48 cookies. So I'm going to declare variables for those. And for this one, I'm going to declare long names. I know maybe it's not, maybe some people may not like it, but long names help make it clear. And in my programs, I do that all the time, just to make sure it's clear. Okay. All right. So I'll do that. And if you're not comfortable with it, you can go ahead and declare short names if you want. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to, actually, it's going to be a double. Declare is going to be the cups of sugar per 48 cookies. So double cups of sugar per 48 cookies. So like I said, it's long, but at least for me, when I do it this way, it helps. Okay, so cups of sugar per 48 cookies is going to be equal to 1.5 here. The next thing is going to be cups of butter per 48 cookies. So that's also going to be a double per 48 cookies. Since it's only one, you can actually decide to declare it as an integer. And let's do that. It might not be advisable, but you can do that, but you end up using typecasting to convert stuff. We'll just leave it as a double for now. All right, so that's going to be 1.00 or 1. And the next thing is going to be cups of flour per 48 cookies. So that's going to be 2.75 cups of flour per 48 cookies. All right, so the next variable I like to store a value in is the 48 cookies. I don't have to, but I like to just store the values in the variables just to make it organized and clear. So I'll do that, and I'll call it regular batch of cookies, because for every 48 cookies you need these ingredients. So that's like a regular batch of cookies. So that's what I'll do, and that's an integer. So int regular batch of cookies, and that's going to be equal to 48. The next thing I'm going to declare is a variable to hold the user's input, how many cookies the user is going to enter. So it's going to be int user number of cookies. That's where we're going to store that. All right, so it's okay for now. We'll come back and declare more variables as we need them. All right, so since we are going to accept input from the user is going to type the number of cookies. Since we're going to accept input from the user, we need some kind of mechanism to accept input. And I'm going to use a scanner for this one, because the program says write a program that asks the user how many cookies that he or she wants to make. So we're going to accept input, and I need to tell the program where the scanner class is found. So I'm going to import it so that it can have access to it. So import java.util.scanner, and now we have, oops, right? Yeah. Does it have, I lost track of it. All right, I'll just leave it there. If it gives us an error, we'll fix it. Okay, so since we have access to the scanner class, now we can go ahead and create a scanner object. All right, so I'll do that. I'll call it scanner. Oops, we don't need that. All right, so we are going to use a system.in to accept input and to accept byte information, and use a method in the scanner class to convert whatever is accepted here to ints or doubles or whatever we need it to be. Okay, so now that we have an object, a scanner object, we can now accept input. So first thing we do is ask the user how many cookies he or she wants to enter. So please enter the number of cookies. All right, so we are going to prompt some kind of text box to accept input. So to do that, I'm going to use the name of the scanner, which is scanner, and I'll use the next int method to accept an integer. And once we accept that, we need to store it in the variable that's going to, the variable that was created to store the user's input, and that's going to be user number of cookies. Okay, so now we have access to the user number of cookies. So now we can go ahead and do these calculations. Now we have it. Now, so to get the how many ingredients we need for how many ingredients we need based on whatever the user types, we need these kind of formulas, right? So the first thing we do is cups of sugar, and we need a variable to hold that. We need a variable to hold how many cups of sugar we're going to need for whatever number of cookies the user enters. So we're going to go ahead to declare that, and I'll call those it's also going to be a double because it could be 1.5, 1.3 and all that. So it's going to be a double, and I'll call the first one expected cups of sugar. Same thing for the other ones, expected cups of butter, and the other ones is also going to be expected the other one is going to be expected cups of flour, and those are going to hold the result of the calculations basically. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is cups of sugar, and if you remember from the beginning of the video explaining the ratio and proportion thing we're doing here, we're always dividing by 48 and multiplying by this. Always dividing by 48 and multiplying by this. Same here. Always dividing by 48 and multiplying by this. So to get the expected cups of sugar, for example, we're always dividing the user's number of cookies. All these are the user's number of cookies. We are dividing the user's number of cookies by the regular batch of cookies we just stored here, and then multiplying by the cups of, for this one for example, it's going to be the cups of sugar per 48 cookies, multiplying by the cups of butter per 48 cookies, and multiplying by the cups of flour per 48 cookies, and I hope you get me. All right, so for expected cups of sugar, we are always dividing the user number of cookies by 48, which is the regular batch of cookies, and multiplying by 1.5. To find the cups of sugar, we're always multiplying by 1.5, and 1.5 is the cups of sugar per 48 cookies. So cups of sugar per 48 cookies. So now we have that. I'm going to go ahead and copy this whole line because it's going to be similar to find out the rest. So expected cups of butter is going to be also, we always dividing by 48 and multiplying by 1. So we're dividing by, same thing. We're dividing the user's number of cookies by the regular batch of cookies and always multiplying by 1. 1 being cups of butter per 48 cookies. Okay. And the last one is going to be expected cups of flour. We are always dividing by 48 and multiplying by 2.75. So user number of cookies by 48 regular batch and multiplying by 2.75, which is cups of flour per 48 cookies. So cups of flour per 48 cookies. I've changed it there, it's fine. Yeah, so now we have the values. Now there could be a problem here, but I'll explain once we get there. Okay, so now we have the result stored here. All we have to do is display it. So just to display information. Okay, so System.out.print ln, and I'll just say for 48 cookies, right? So that's going to 48 stored in regular batch. So for regular batch of cookies, so for 48 cookies, comma, you will need space expected cups of sugar, and that's going to be expected cups of sugar. So expected cups of sugar. So for example, if that's 4, then it's going to be read, you will need, let's say, 4 cups of sugar. Put a comma there, and I'll concatenate this. Yeah, I'll concatenate this, and I'll break it in the next line. Okay, so expected cups of 4 cups of sugar, and that's just I'm just assuming that there's 4 stored in here. So 4 cups of sugar, comma, expected cups of butter. So if there are 3 cups of butter, then now it's going to read, comma, 3 cups of butter let's do that, and I'll concatenate it with expected cups of flour. So if there are, let's say, 8 cups of flour, then it's going to be 8, I'll concatenate it with cups of flour. Okay, so now I hope you get me doing this, because sometimes it can be confusing, but basically all I'm doing is concatenating variables with strings so that it can read nicely. All right, so now I have it done. So hopefully it works. I'm going to compile it and see if it works. But like I said, there's a problem here, and I'll come back to it. All right, so I'll go ahead and compile this, and I'll save it in here. I'll create a new folder for it. Ingredient adjuster. I actually did this program out just to test it, and that's how I figured out that problem I mentioned earlier. But we'll go back to it, and I'll I'll fix it. So ingredient adjuster, create it, and yeah, I'll create those files. I'll create the files here. Okay. All right, so we have a problem. The first thing is, what is it saying? Error. Yeah, so I was thinking it doesn't need this. So this was what I was talking about. I don't think it needs that. So I'll go ahead and I'll compile that again, and it fixed. We fixed it. We don't have any more problems. So I'll go ahead and I'll run it, and it's asking, please enter the number of cookies. So I'm going to enter 48. So 48 should give us these ingredients, because it said for 48 cookies, right? The recipe produces 48 cookies with these amount of ingredients. So it should give us 1.5 cups of sugar, 1 cup of butter, and 2.75 cups of flour. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter here. And it said for 48 cookies, you will need 1.5 cups of sugar, 1.0 cups of butter, which is the same, and 2.75 cups of flour. So that works. That works, which is nice. So you may think the program runs, but this is the problem. Let's say if I enter 70, 48. So if I enter, let's say 96, right? 96. So that should give us, let's say, basically times 2 of all these. So because 48, 96 plus 48, I think it's 96. So 96, 3.0, 2.0, it's still working. So let's see. So maybe I kind of fixed it here. All right, 48. All right, let's try, so that worked. Let's try something else. Let's try something like, let's say 49, right? 49, because, it makes sense because, that's going to give it exactly 2. All right, never mind. So let's try something like 56. See? It's for 56 cookies. It's saying for 48 cookies, you will need 1.5 cups of sugar, 1.0 cups of butter, and 2.75. That's not right, because these are the same ingredients needed for 48 cookies. So if 48 cookies gives us these ingredients, it shouldn't give us the same thing when we put in 56 cookies. So that's a problem here. The reason why we're getting these results, which is wrong, is from this calculation. Now, if you look at regular batch of cookies, that's 48. That's an integer. The user's number of cookies, that's also an integer. All right. So let's pull this up a little bit here. The way Java works is with division here is this. Now, if you put 2 numbers here, Java is going to divide it, but if both of these 2 values are integers, then Java is going to consider that as an integer division. And what it does is this. If the result of this is, let's say, 2.3, because both of these 2 values were integers, Java is going to consider it as an integer division, and instead of giving us 2.3, will only give us an integer. So 2.3, it will drop the 0.3 and give us just 2. If it was 2.9, it will drop the 0.9 and give us just 2. If it was 5.1, it will drop anything after the decimal point and give us the integer. So that's the problem. Over here, we are dividing the user's number of cookies, right, by the regular batch. And we put in user number of cookies. We put in 56 for user number of cookies. So basically, it's 56 divided by 48. When you put in 56 divided by 48 in a calculator, you get 1.16. Let's say basically 1.2. Basically 1.2, right? So we need the 1.2 multiplied by this to get the right result. But because both of these values are integers, Java is going to consider that as an integer division. Instead of giving us the 1.2, it's going to drop the 0.2 and give us just 1. So this results in 1, which is not what we want, because 1 times cups of sugar per 48 cookies. 1 times 1.5 will give us 1.5. And that's a problem. It's supposed to be 1.2 times cups of sugar per 48 cookies. And that's a problem. Java is only giving us 1 because these two are both integers. And that's wrong. We need 1.2, as a result of these two dividing. Multiply by that. But when these two are both integers, Java is going to drop anything after decimal points. Even if this result gives us a decimal, like say 1.2, Java is going to give us 1 because these two are both integers. Java is going to give us just the 1 and drop anything after the decimal point. Instead of giving us 1.2, it will give us 1. I'm explaining this just because I want it to be clear. Okay. And I know that this is not basically explaining Java, but I want to explain some of the parts that can be confusing, just to make it clear, because this can give you serious problems. All right, so the only way you can get 1.2 from this result is that at least one of these has to be a double for it to work. So you can come here and declare at least one of them to be a double, and you can fix the problem, easily there. But we want it to be logical. Regular batch of cookies is 48. That's what the program said. So we're leaving that as an int. The user number of cookies we could have declared as a double because a user could have typed, let's say, 2.5, 2.5 cookies. But I also wanted that to be an integer, just so we could, just because the book stuck with integers. So I wanted that to be an integer, and also it helped us bring this problem so we can understand it more. So the only way you can get a double out of this, so we can multiply this, is one of these has to be an integer. And like I said, you can go here and declare these as doubles if you want, and that will fix the problem. Or you can use typecasting. It's still going to typecasting to convert, not kind of convert it, but yeah, to kind of change this or to convert it to an integer. It's something called typecasting in Java to convert this to a double. But these will still remain as integers. So that's nice. You can convert it to a double at the same time, keeping these still as integers. So only one of them, at least one of them, one or both, but it needs just one of them so it can return the whole double. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and compile this, for example, into a double. And typecasting works this way. You just put in parentheses what you want to convert this value to. I want to convert it to a double. So you put that in parentheses in front of the value. And that's how it works. So basically, now I've converted the user's number of cookies. The user entered 56, so now it's going to be 56.0 divided by 48. And it doesn't matter if this is just an integer. Because this now is regarded as a double, it has been converted to a double just on a temporary basis, just so we can get the full double result from this whole thing. And I hope this is clear. I'm sorry for over-explaining, but I like to do that so it's clear. Yeah, so the same thing for this also. The same thing we're having the same problem for this because it's given us 1.0, 2.75. So I'm also going to convert this. And the reason why I'm doing this is because any of them, at least one of them has to be a double. So I'm just keeping this as an integer and converting this temporarily to, a double. And I want to convert regular batch of cookies into a double. And you put that in parentheses right in front of the value you want to convert to. This video is going to be longer, I'm sorry, but I just want this to be clear. That's why I'm over explaining the ratio and proportion and this. So I'm sorry if it's long, but if this helps in making you understand it, I win. I mean, I'm happy. That's more important to me than it being long. You can skip through it, if you understand some of the parts, skip to parts that you don't understand. And if you don't understand it, to watch all of it if you can, and if it helps you, like I said, I win. I'm very happy with that. All right, so the same thing for this one also. And I'll convert this one into a double. So now we're going to get the values, because now this calculation, each of these calculations is going to result in a double, because at least one of them is a double. At least one of them is a double, because this has been converted to a double, At the same time, this is just a temporary thing. It's still, the variable itself still, still remains as an int, as an integer. But over here in this calculation, whatever is stored in here as an int is converted to a double on a temporary basis, just for this calculation. Okay, so just for this calculation, and just for this calculation to result in a double. Otherwise, if both of these are integers, even though the result is a double, it's going to just give us, it's just going to convert it to an integer and give us that. So if this results in 1.2, it's going to just give us 1 and drop anything after decimal point. It's going to drop the 0.2 and give us 1. I think I'm talking too much. All right, but I hope it makes sense. All right, so now it's going to work. So now if we put 56, we shouldn't get this, because that's wrong. These are the ingredients for 48 cookies, not 56 cookies. So I'm going to go ahead and compile this and run it again and put in the same 56 cookies. All right, so 56 cookies. Now, see, it's given us different values. So for 48 cookies, now you will need 1.75 cups of sugar, 1.16666 cups of butter, and 3 this number cups of flour. And that's fine, because the reason why we're getting these values is because we are not converting them. We are not rounding them. Sorry, we are not rounding them, and that's why we are getting these values. This is correct. We are just not rounding them to get, let's say, two sig figs or two significant figures. That's why it's giving us all these values. But this works. This makes sense, and this works. If we still put in 48 cookies, we are still going to get that the right number. If we put in 96, we are still going to get the right number. If we put in something else, other than 56 or 90, 48 or 96, let's say 47, they're going to get the equivalent cups for each ingredient. So this works. And chapter 2 doesn't go into rounding numbers and all that, so we'll leave it like this. And maybe not maybe, when we get to the future chapters, we are going to use the methods that are taught there to round these values as and when we need them. But this works. And yeah, just make sure you understand typecasting, how to why this was giving us wrong results and why it's giving us the right results now. And that's it. So again, and make sure you understand this too. Yeah, if you understand it, great. If you don't understand it, you try to make sure you understand it, because it's important to make the program more easy to write or easy to understand. All right, I'm talking too much. So yeah, so this is the program. It works. And if you have any questions, please, as always, post them down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. And thanks very much for watching. Sorry for it being long, and have a good day. Thanks. Bye-bye.